We are GOLDIVY.
Our mission is to empower you to own and unleash your truth.
Stories of resiliency are gold, and ivy grows in hard places.
Those hard places are what create space for light to shine through.
You decide what works for your daily life and how to transform our lessons into your gold.
This is Ivy Unleashed,
a GOLDIVY production. Brooke, what do you think everyone wants more of?
Energy.
What do you think most people are hoping to come out of 2023 with?
Feel more confident, be an example for others, actually have the self-discipline to take care of themselves.
Yes, exactly. Because we hear the need for it and we want to help you get in the best shape of your life, we created Move with GOLDIVY, our virtual workout platform.
Our dream has been to create accessible, affordable, and effective workouts that you can do anytime, anywhere, designed to hold you accountable and get you the results you need.
You can pick any workout you want at any time, but if you do want a plan that alternates muscle groups and leaves your body feeling energized and strong, we have a weekly plan that you can follow to take the guesswork out.
It's easy to navigate and packed with all kinds of workouts that will help you strengthen, trim, pump up, tone, energize, de-stress, all of the things we want our body to feel. It's within Move.
Don't forget to mention the resources we offer. As a member of Move with GOLDIVY, you'll be a part of our exclusive Ivy League community, where we share our top wellness resources on things like meal planning, gut health hacks, time management, and more.
And because you listen to the Ivy Unleashed podcast, we want to offer you all of this for only $20 a month, cheaper than any monthly membership you'll find.
Not only that, you'll get a free trial week to test it out.
And if you need more incentive to start prioritizing you, here's our favorite part. Your movement matters. Each month, 10% of your membership will be donated to support the mental health of those in need.
So head on over to goldivyhealthco.com/move or find the link within the show notes of this episode and sign up today. Stop putting yourself in the back burner. Snag your spot and reap the benefits that you deserve to feel this year.
It's your time. Move for your health, move for your confidence, move for your mental clarity, move with GOLDIVY. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Every episode of Ivy Unleashed is dedicated to empowering you to take ownership of your health. And what it really comes down to is prioritizing your mental health.
We've both seen the beauty and growth that therapy can bring and are thrilled to partner with BetterHelp to allow you the opportunity to feel heard and seen by a professional. The National Alliance on Mental Health reports that 155 million people live in a designated mental health professional shortage area, and BetterHelp is working to close that gap.
I've personally used BetterHelp and loved it because it was all online, making it super convenient. The biggest piece for me was how affordable it is. I was able to choose the therapist that met my needs. I came in with wanting to work on childhood trauma and anxiety, and it was unbelievable to see how many options I had with all the different backgrounds of therapists.
With BetterHelp, you have access to a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness. And sometimes we can't see our own patterns and behaviors until we talk them out and get an unbiased perspective.
It's really nice to have someone who doesn't know you and has the professional background to help you thrive in your daily life. It has made the world of a difference with every relationship in my life, including the one with myself.
To get started, all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire about your needs and preferences and choose your therapist out of the options they give you. You can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. Also, you can switch therapists at no additional charge until you find the right fit for you.
The best investment you can make is in yourself. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/goldivy. That's betterhelp.com/goldivy.
Take the first step to inner peace and freedom today. And now to this episode of the Ivy Unleashed podcast. Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. Thank you so much for joining us today. Brooke and I are thrilled to have a guest here that's going to talk about something that we have never touched on, but is crucial to your development, your relationships, your life in general, the quality of your life. So we have on writer, content creator, author of The Anxious Heart's Guide. We have Rikki Cloos here. Welcome to Ivy Unleashed.
Hi, thanks for having me, you guys.
Oh, we are so excited.
I'm excited to be here.
And we're excited to have you because we're going to dive into relationships, which who doesn't want to better their relationships? Watching your content, Rikki, a lot of it comes back to the way we communicate, how we help meet our partner's needs, knowing that we cannot change them when most of us would like to. And so we're going to dive into all that today. But let's rewind and take us back to your journey into this work. Why attachment theory? How did you get into attachment styles?
I think all throughout my 20s and even my early 30s, I was kind of a train wreck in my relationships. That's weird to say too, because I spent most of that time married. But these things can kind of bubble under the surface without us realizing how much damage they're causing. And it wasn't until I found myself on the brink of divorce that I really started digging into this stuff. I'm a psychology nerd at heart. My background was writing, but I really I spent lots of time digging into psychology books, but never the relationship stuff until things started going south for me. When I finally got divorced because we couldn't figure it out, it ended up being attachment theory is just something that I stumbled upon when I was looking into how can I make sure that this never happens for me again? And I kind of just pulled every subject that I could find in the relationship literature to see what might ring some bells and sound like that's what happened for us. When I found attachment theory and I really dove in, I read almost 60 books on the subject in a single year. Because like I said, I'm a nerd. When I find a topic that I love, I kind of go all in. I was able to present it to my ex-husband and say, hey, what do you think about this? Does this ring bells for you too? And even he was like, yep, that's exactly what happened to us. I wonder if I had known then what I know now, if I'd have been able to figure it out with him. But that's the past now. Moving forward, I was able to use all of my reading on attachment theory to kind of patch up my horrible dating life that I had post divorce and actually make things work with a fantastic partner that I found who had a very opposite attachment style as me. So once I started doing that, as a writer, I had to write about it. That's how my Instagram account was born. And I'm not a therapist or a psychologist, but I'm a writer who just absolutely loves a certain topic. And I like to spread that to other anxious kind of train wreck daters and folks who are having trouble in their marriage, because I was able to find so much relief from anxiety in dating and relationships myself.
Wow. That is so cool how that all comes together, because it's like, what would be better first, to be a therapist and then figure out how to write, because the way you present information it's so like graspable. It feels like there's bullets and there's videos that you even have with you and your partner talking through, asking him questions. And then you can even see in it how you give him space and time to respond to you. And I'm like, oh man, she is like the sweetest partner, and just the way you talk and you're just curious and open. It's just beautiful that I just love too. It's so magical when people take hardship and then they're able to, like you said, kind of patch it up. Even it sounds like it's kind of was a peaceful resolution and owning your end. And then he could kind of own his so that you can bring your best self forward. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. I do think that's part of my secret sauce is that I wasn't a psychologist first. I think being a writer with the goal of communicating kind of difficult and sticky concepts to people first, and then diving into kind of a tough psychological topic is what makes people relate to me on the account. They're like, she's here to teach us something, and she's kind of a regular person like us. So I don't want to hear all the heavy psychological speak that's hard to wade through. I want like actionable tips. I want, how can I actually apply this to my relationship and make it better? That's the goal anyway.
And something I love is how relatable your content is. People can see themselves in you and your husband and the examples that you share. And I would love for you, Rikki, to take a step back and let's just define what the different styles are for people listening.
And I'm going to try to make this as user-friendly as possible because this stuff can get kind of sticky too. So way back in the 50s and 60s, British psychologist John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth were looking at the way that children attach to their caregivers. They found two different ways that those children attach: securely and insecurely. So secure attachment's pretty easy to describe. Those are people who have a pretty easy time in intimate and romantic relationships. They have healthy boundaries. They're pretty comfortable with mutual trust and support. Conflict feels very controlled in that they don't run from it and they're not desperate to resolve things. They had good models growing up for conflict resolution and revealing their needs and wants. So we're not going to talk about them so much. If that's the camp that you fall into, that's amazing. But we're talking about the other attachment styles, which Bowlby and Ainsworth described as insecure. That's three different camps. You've got your anxious attachers. Those are my people. We have an intense fear of abandonment, a need for constant validation. We tend to be dependent on our partners for our self-worth. So you can just imagine how lovely dating and relationships go when that's how you describe yourself. We've got avoidant attachers. These are people who are really uncomfortable with intimacy. They kind of avoid it like the plague if they can. Vulnerability is also really uncomfortable for them. They typically have a lot of commitment issues, and they tend to come off as guarded and closed off. Another subset of the insecurely attached are the fearful avoidants. I want to be careful when I discuss that because it's a combination style. They kind of have the worst of both worlds, but it's really less common than you think. The surveys find less than 10%. Some surveys even find less than 5% of people fall into that category. So when I describe this, don't be too quick to say, hey, that's me. Fearful avoidants are also intensely afraid of rejection and abandonment, but they have a hard time trusting and relying on a partner for anything. They also have the low self-worth and the constant need for validation. It's kind of every bad point from the anxious and the avoidant side, fearful avoidants also have. But if that is ringing bells for people, they also tend to be the most motivated to work on themselves. So there's that too. I would say the fearful avoidance also, that kind of comes from like a lot of trauma in childhood or early romantic relationships. So let's set that one aside. What I talk about on my account exclusively is the anxious side and the avoidant side. That's going to be around 50% of the population, almost divided completely in half, with a little bit more avoidant people than anxious people.
One of our most popular episodes was with Jessie Golden, the creator of our new favorite and life-changing skincare line, The Golden Secrets.
You've probably seen us post about it because we take it everywhere with us, but we wanted to fill you in on exactly what we're using and the results we're seeing with this sustainable, fair trade, and cruelty-free skincare and wellness line.
Jessie mentioned that the one thing she'd take to a deserted island is her Heal oil. So with her incredible-looking skin, I jumped in and bought it right away. I'm using the Heal oil as a moisturizer at the end of my skincare routine, or if I'm in a rush and only use one product after cleansing, it's the Heal oil. I also use it right before my new gua sha routine. The Golden Secrets has a gua sha tool called the Sorceress Stone Gua Sha Beauty Tool. It's an ancient holistic facial massage tool that enhances your skincare routine by increasing blood flow, circulation, and nutrients to brighten the complexion and tone, and it lifts the facial muscles naturally. Jessie says, this is the one beauty tool, hands down, that has made the greatest impact on my skin. It has helped retrain the way the patterns of my face, muscles, and skin function. I'm already seeing more definition in my jawline and cheekbones, which is so exciting. Jessie provides tutorials on exactly how to use all of her tools and products. So as a person who's notorious for knowing nothing about skincare, The Golden Secrets has been my favorite discovery.
And for me, I've spent years getting back my health. And because of that, I take what I put in and on my body very serious. I can say without a doubt that the Golden Secrets is the only skincare products I will use in the future. I swear by the Heal oil, the Youth Beauty Face Oil, coconut lip balm, and will soon have every product on my bathroom sink.
The Golden Secrets is rooted in nature, ancient wisdom, and organic beauty. Jessie Golden thrives on making skincare and wellness products that benefit everybody.
We're thrilled that we have a discount code you can use to save money when you shop The Golden Secrets. Use code GOLDIVY for 10% off today and keep watching us at GOLDIVY Health Co. on all social channels as we continue to share our amazing results with the Golden Secrets skincare line.
You can find the link and code in the show notes of this episode.
If you struggle with digestion, energy, bloat, acne, mood, fatigue, listen up. I spent 4 years, 50 plus doctors, and tens of thousands of dollars to heal my gut so you don't have to. I've created the what to do guide I wish I had before spending years navigating the overwhelming amount of information and conflicting doctors' opinions out in the gut health world. My help, I can't figure out what's wrong with me, the How to Heal Your Gut Starter Kit is now available, and the response to it online has been incredible. On top of what I wish I would have known, I also wish this information would have been easily accessible for me. Because of that, it's available to you on the shop page of our website for only $9.99. Included in my guide is what helped me and countless others heal their gut, along with chronic fatigue, acne, hormone imbalances, and so much more. You'll learn what foods to stay away from, what foods to eat, a 4-week gut healing eating plan, lifestyle tools to aid your healing process, and 2 of my go-to favorite recipes. So head over to our shop page on our website, goldivyhealthco.com, and remember, happy gut, happy life. You can heal. Let me help you.
And now back to the show. I'm curious, like, how this happens. Like you said, childhood, and there's trauma involved, and I'm sure it's so complicated for everyone. Like, I can see myself in like all of these things, but then took the quiz that you can take that shows I'm securely attached. And so, like, how do you identify yourself? Is it just like a majority? And like, where does this come from?
So when you imagine a baby lying in a crib, their brain is being wired to let them know how the environment responds to their needs. They're hungry, they need comfort, they're afraid. They're taking in information on how available their caregivers are. For the anxious babies, that would be like me. I'm hypersensitive to whether or not my parents are listening to my needs. I'm always on high alert for where they are. It's also like, before we're too quick to blame our parents about this, they're finding that we also kind of come wired with certain dispositions. If we didn't, all siblings would probably have the same attachment style, and they certainly don't. I was kind of an anxious, nervous kid anyway, and probably baby. And my sister and brother were totally not. They're very chill. So they don't share the same anxious tendencies that I do.
Where are you in the lineup with your siblings?
Oh, I'm the middle sibling.
Sibling dynamics are they're so interesting.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, you have the same upbringing, yet you have all different attachments. It's just
ish though. I just read about like how you don't have the same upbringing because like the firstborn has new parents that have never done this before. They might be a little bit more anxious. Yeah. And by the third one, they might have more money, or they might have figured things out, or they might be like, I'm out of here. I'm not going to be hanging around because I'm ready to live my life a little bit more.
Or I'm sure your relationship with them too.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, we have the same parents, but we kind of don't as far as birth order goes. I do think my little sister, who's so cool and calm in relationships, she's only 1 year younger than me. So I imagine that when she was born lying in the crib and she's crying, my mom probably approached her with like I've got this attitude, you know? But for me, I'm 10 years younger than my big brother. So mom was kind of doing it again freshly for the first time. And I can imagine she probably had some anxiety about it.
Yeah.
And I picked up on that as a baby, right? Anyway, that's how anxious attachment is born. We're soaking up these fearful, nervous feelings of our parents. We're noticing intensely when they're not picking us up or attuned to our needs. And so in that way, our way of finding safety within ourselves is to always be on high alert for where they're at, or whether or not they're attuned to us, or how we can make them know that we have needs. Then we've got the avoidant attachers. Avoidant attachers don't view closeness as safe because in their mind, their parents were very not attuned to their needs. It's like when they would cry, their parents were kind of dismissive or unavailable. And like I said, before we blame parents too much on this, it could just also be a baby who found that doing things themselves or calming themselves down was a quicker, more efficient way to feel calm and safe than relying on other people. So those kind of folks become like fiercely independent. One of my heroes in this field, Stan Tatkin, describes the attachment styles with much kinder words. He'll use island and wave for anxious and attachment. So he calls the avoidant attachers islands. They're just kind of more comfortable standing on their own without anybody, bothering them or helping them. And the anxious attachers he calls waves. Imagine us kind of beating at the shore of the islands, going, "Pay attention to me, love me. I need your reassurance." I'm not going to refer to them that way throughout the rest of the podcast, but if anybody's listening and they want to read more about it, Stan Tatkin's book, Wired for Love, is one of my very favorites. If you want to learn more about attachment styles and just do like a good deep dive that's still very easy to understand, his book is excellent up for that.
Thank you for providing that. I love when people give book recommendations because I think it's important. And another reason why we love following you is just like, you can see yourself in these, because sometimes you're like, I don't really know where I stand. And I could take a quiz, but like, I don't know for sure. Like I can see myself in both of those because I'm very independent, but I do need reassurance, and so it's another reason why I love seeing you talk with your partner, because you're different. So how does that work together with you being the anxious attachment and him being the avoidant? Like, how do you kind of work together so that it's more cohesive?
Oh, I love that question. But before I dive into that, let me address what you just said. Seeing yourself in both of those things, you need reassurance sometimes, but you're also very independent. That's actually a secure trait. That's a good thing, because we're meant to be kind of dependent in a romantic relationship, but also kind of independent. And if you can find safety and comfort in both of those things, that's a very secure trait.
Oh, good.
You're doing okay.
Okay, good. Thank you, Rikki.
Anxious and avoidant partners are really drawn to each other. That's what the literature shows. Knowing a lot about both of those things is really helpful in navigating the dynamics and the conflict that arise because of that. I have the advantage, obviously, in my relationship, because this is all I read about all day long. I do take the time to sit down with my partner sometimes, and I'll say, "Hey, I've noticed that this argument that we are having a lot looks like something that I've read about. Are you open to hearing about that?" And he always is, because who doesn't want to figure out why you're having the same fights over and over again, So education can really help. That also makes us feel less like the other person is damaged or out to get us. Having that deep understanding about why our partner does what they're doing helps us to not take it so personally. Then we can keep more of a cool head during arguments.
Yeah. The more you know, the more you can. Yeah. And it's nice too. It's like almost having a therapist. Like, this book said this, where do we see ourselves in it? Not like, you're this one.
Yeah. But even for yourself, I keep thinking about meeting your own unmet needs. So, Rikki, when you found this literature, you started consuming it. You were like, oh, okay, I recognize myself in this anxious attachment. Then what did you do? How did you start to heal and work through?
I'm a prolific journaler, but as a writer, of course I would be. And for everything that I read, I would take what I thought was the most helpful tip or strategy that they had for addressing it, and I would just go all in on it. And after a while, I found what I thought were the most effective things to get me through it. I write about all of this in my book, The Anxious Heart's Guide, but some of those things would be like, learning to self-soothe, which I know nobody wants to hear about, because if you're anxious, you want other people to do that for you. But self-soothing was very important. Assertive communication was really, really important. I was a passive communicator. I would hint or cry or stomp around and hope that people got the message, but they never did. So learning assertive communication was very big for me. Building up support of family and friends who I could rely on instead of a romantic partner, that was also massive to help cope with anxious attachment. Things like that. My book describes all the different ways that I worked on myself. Until you mention all these tests, there's so many wonderful free tests online. And nowadays, when I take those tests, I test fully secure. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't still have anxious tendencies, because of course I do. Brains aren't that plastic, or aren't that elastic. For the most part, my thoughts and my behavior is very secure. And that kind of helps to create an anchor in my relationship too, so that when my partner's feeling more avoidant or not being analytical about one of our arguments, it helps me to be kind of a rock.
I love that. I think too, it's like taking yourself out of this box, or like, we coach people all day long and like, I am this and it's just how it is. It's like, well, I may have been born kind of this way. I might have kind of been nurtured this way. I might have had these patterns for years, but it's kind of giving you the freedom to learn more and then experiment with it. Like, what does help me, and then knowing that it can change. It doesn't have to stay the same way. You don't have to blame yourself or blame someone else for their faults. But I'm interested to hear about, like, it sounds like you have a very open partner. I'm curious if like you feel like this is something that avoidant people like tend to avoid learning about because it could create conflict, or like, did you have to convince him to try and do this? Or did you only find a partner that you knew would be open to this? Like, how did that work?
Oh, that's a really good question. This is going to be sticky because I don't want people to think that a very, very difficult partner who refuses to learn anything is somebody that they should necessarily stick with. That can be really tough. But at the same time, I'm really big on talking on my account about how we can't change partners, and we should absolutely not try to take the role as their teacher or therapist. That can get really dangerous, and it really sucks the romance out of a relationship too, by the way. I don't recommend it. So for me, I know when I started learning about all this, the dream was to find somebody who was secure and done, and maybe in like tons and tons of therapy so that they would be able to relate to the things I was talking about. But you guys know how love works. That's not what I found. I found a completely regular person who was not obsessed with this topic, who happened to have avoidant tendencies, which was tough because that means that all of his issues rubbed all the sore spots of my issues too. Anxious and avoidant partners do tend to bring out the worst in each other, especially when conflict arises. So I have to admit that in the very beginning, I definitely went on a bit of a crusade trying to push some of this stuff on him, and it completely backfired. He felt like I was attacking him. He felt like I thought that he was less than, like he wasn't a good partner. And really, that approach almost like ripped us apart. We almost didn't get off the ground early in our relationship. But it wasn't until I totally gave up on him. And I made a video where I said that too, and it did pretty well, because the rest of the video goes on to explain how you have to give up on the idea of your partner as a project and really turn all that energy back on yourself. That's not to say that you're the issue, but you're the only one that you can work on. And when you can really address these issues and become very secure, it kind of makes it so that you could sort of be with almost any partner, no matter what their issues are, because a secure partner is going to be kind of like a rock that's very soothing to the other person, no matter what their attachment issues are.
Yeah. And something that you talk a lot about too are boundaries. And so it's like, you're not getting walked all over here. Like, you can be with people with these boundaries that you've set and established by knowing yourself well and communicating them. And so it's not like you can just be with anybody and they can treat you however. It's like, no, like, like you're secure in yourself, you know what you deserve and how you deserve to be treated. You can communicate that. And then if they can't honor it, then peace out, homie. But like, if they can honor it and you can communicate the way that you and your partner do, it's beautiful how things can change and how you can learn from each other.
Yeah, thanks. Let's inject a little nuance into this too, and remind people that here's just a good example of those boundaries too. Let's say I'm out in the dating field and I find somebody, they have avoidant attachment. They're not calling me back. They're not opening up when I'm asking them questions. That doesn't mean I just go hardcore into self-help books and try to make myself the perfect partner. It means that I directly and assertively communicate to them, hey, I'm looking for a relationship, like a labeled relationship, and I'm also looking for somebody who's very responsive when I'm communicating with them. It's okay if you're not like that, but it's not okay for me in a romantic relationship. So that's kind of an example of how you have healthy boundaries. You let other people be who they are, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're sitting around in a situationship with somebody who's not texting you back.
I love that. That is so helpful. And I think having the verbiage around what to say can be helpful, right? Because, oh yeah, that sounds good. I know boundaries, but what does that actually sound like? So thank you for that. I also want to talk about, you mentioned that not all relationships are 50-50, and that's okay. So let's get into that. What do you mean by that?
Oh, I love that. I love that so much because I was running into a lot of memes and accounts on Instagram when I was dating that were saying like, it's my favorite example is the one that says, if he wanted to, he would, which is like the most toxic statement on the internet because there's like a lot of reasons why people aren't doing the best possible thing that they could. And I think that's a great segue into talking about how things aren't 50-50 in a relationship. In a relationship with two secure robots, maybe, where people are always at the same exact spot with what they've learned and the same exact spot with their capabilities, that would be a 50-50. But there are days where I wake up and I'm not my 100% self. You know, I'm tired, I'm crabby. And there are days where he's picking up the slack on those days. And we have the opposite happen. Sometimes he wakes up in a terrible mood and I have to pick up the slack. Some days we're both having a terrible day and it might just be better for us to spend the day apart than to pick each other apart. And I talk on my account sometimes about the idea of equity instead of equality. I have certain strengths, not the least of which is a lot of knowledge about attachment and communication and conflict. And so in that way, I'm really happy to pick up a little bit more of the slack than my partner who has less knowledge about that. He's not going to fight me on it. He knows that that's my strength. So he's very open to listening about it. But on the other side of the coin, I have no skills with logistics. I can't build anything. I can't plan things. My time management is dismal. So in that way, those are strengths that he brings to the relationship. I'm really happy that he and I fill in a lot of each other's gaps. And I think that's what I would encourage anyone to look for in the dating world. You're not looking for somebody who is your exact mirror. Sometimes when they say opposites attract, it's because we can make each other better in the ways that we're weak, and we can help pick up the slack where the other person doesn't know as much or maybe isn't as capable.
That's such a good reminder every day of your life. Because I feel like when you're in a committed relationship, like, and I keep thinking about like my childhood or just even being in my friends' households, seeing parents, you're like, oh, when I'm older, it's going to be more fair than this, like, oh, but it's just like a small glimpse of what is fair. And I am totally the fairness police. And I'll be like, if I'm picking up too much, I'm always looking at my husband and analyzing like, he needs to be doing more around here, And so I know that about myself. Like I know that I'm hyper aware when things are off, because I think coming from a divorced family and seeing relationships fall apart, not really having role models to show me a healthy relationship, I'm like paranoid that this is how it falls apart. So how do you talk to, or like what kind of language do you provide around people that are kind of like, they're pretty secure in relationships, but they're also kind of paranoid, like, because they don't know if they're doing it right, because they've never had a role model to really teach them.
In my own book, I do encourage people to seek out relationship role models, preferably not anything in books or movies, but like real life people who have relationships that you really admire. And that's not to say that they're perfect, because no relationship is. If you see people who seem to navigate conflict well or treat each other with a lot of respect, I love just sitting down with them and asking them like, hey, my partner and I argue about the dishes a lot. What do you guys do with the dishes? Like, what's your system? Do you have something that we might be able to steal some techniques from? That's been really helpful for me because, gosh, I love my parents so much, but they were also like terrible examples for how to navigate conflict or how to make things fair or feel fair.
I was thinking about, when you were saying that, I was thinking about Michelle and Barack Obama, because she'll say things like, I hated him for a couple years. She's like, he was a terrible husband, but like, he knew that he was messing up and we communicated about it and we knew we were having a rough patch. So I think think that fear in me, like, I think I need to, as my, I've been married for 12 years. And I think what I'm seeing is, we have these seasons, these times of year that are a little bit more stressful, or a little bit where it's harder to communicate, or there's lack of sleep with small kids, or whatever it may be. And I think, from understanding your work and hearing more from you, it's almost like slowing down and just listening and just paying attention, so that you're not like jumping to conclusions and you're not attacking each other. It's like, I love this person and I want this to work. So let's like just take a second before we come at each other. Like, my avoidant partner isn't responding right now, and I want this the solution now. So how have you found that patience in yourself when you're feeling anxious, you want the solution now, and he's like, I need a minute?
Yeah, that was really tough at first, especially as an anxious attacher. We want resolution now. Conflict feels very unsafe for the anxiously attached, to where the avoidantly attached, they're better at sitting with conflict while they sneak off and think about it for a while. That's a skill that they have, by the way. So not all the attachment styles are all negative traits,
What is wrong with those people? No, just kidding.
I feel attacked.
I really admire how avoidants can sit with conflict and go off and think about it without completely falling apart. It's like a superpower that they have. For me, I had to practice it. I know nobody wants to hear that, but journaling was a godsend for me when I would feel totally overwhelmed by conflict and my brain was just throwing lots of unhelpful messages at me. I would sit down with my journal, and sometimes I would tell myself, hey, I have the urge to go find my partner and just throw all the things at him that I'm upset about that aren't thought out. And I would just force myself to sit down with my journal, write out what I'm upset about, what I would like to happen, what I would like him to know, what I need from him. And once I had all those bullet points written down, I had cooled down. It's hard to be angry when you're writing that stuff out for a half hour or a solid hour. So just forcing myself to take some time away from the escalated situation to write things down in a logical way, that was really helpful, because I definitely was very reactive and emotional when I was younger. But with practice, that's not to say that I don't feel those strong emotions right away, but I know now that it's better if I don't act on them and I think them through before I bring them to someone else.
I love that. I'm sure it feels over time safe. Your body and your brain recognize it's okay to pause. It's okay to not react right away. But when that's a habit of yours for so long, that's tough. But like Andrea said, it's about slowing down. And in today's society, people don't want to hear that. They don't want to think about actually taking ownership and doing the tough work. But it doesn't have to be tough work. It can be just sitting with your journal, turning inward, reading a book. There's so many awesome resources, and your page is an awesome resource, and your book, which everyone needs to go get. So will you tell our listeners where they can find your work, your book, all of the things?
Yeah, absolutely. My book, The Anxious Heart's Guide, you can find it at my website, which is just anxiousheartsguide.com, or Amazon. I know a lot of people like to shop on Amazon. They just throw that in the cart with their other stuff. You can find the paperback on Amazon or the digital version. I also just recently recorded the audiobook. That's kind of exciting.
Awesome.
So if you're an audio listener, you can get that there. The Instagram page, Anxious Hearts Guide, or you could search for Rikki Cloos. I'm pretty prolific on there. I try to post every single day. I try to think about the issues that I'm dealing with during the day or the day before, and that's what I write about. People send in so many wonderful questions on the DMs. So sometimes I'll make a post based on a great question that I receive. That's a good place to connect. I have a Patreon where people can connect with me. That's patreon.com/Anxious Hearts Guide. At the Patreon, I'm currently in the process of writing a book for anxious and avoidant attachers who are in relationship together. Yeah, that book is about halfway done. But if you want to read what I have written so far, it's like a $3 subscription. Gets you access to all the current chapters. So that's kind of fun. A lot of the patrons are right there with me while I'm writing it.
That's amazing. I've never heard that done before.
Yeah.
What a cool concept.
Yeah. And I just think it's so wonderful that you're doing what you're doing, because it's clear that like you just have such a calming spirit about like how you even speak about this, because you're so genuine. Like you're like, that was me and I'm in the midst of it. And this is what's working well for us. And so I think it's so beautiful when someone has that gift and they use it, right? Like, cause you could have easily just not created an account and you could have easily not exposed your relationship faults or, you know, things that you're working on. And I love that. I think it's so beautiful. And I'm so happy that you're still creating. And we'll plug everything in our show notes so people can have access to you.
I really appreciate that. This is my favorite topic. And honestly, if I hadn't written about it, I would probably just be bugging all the people I know, like annoying them with this topic 24/7. So it's nice to be able to talk to other people who and present posts and writing for people who care about it too.
Yeah, we love it. And we're so grateful for your time. Thank you for sitting down with us today, sharing your message. We leave our listeners with 3 gold stars, our takeaways. Would you please share yours?
The very first and most important thing would be to stop looking at your partner or your potential partner as a project. We can be our own great project. I take a lot of pride and enjoyment in working on myself. And I find that the more secure and calm and understanding I am with myself, that really bleeds into my relationship in the best way. So that would be the first one. Gosh, I just want everybody to journal. I know not everybody's into journaling, but I truly think that's been the absolute most helpful thing for me. It's kind of like free therapy. I know it can be frustrating when you're writing things down and you don't feel like you're getting answers out of that, but really just sitting down and writing messages to yourself and communicating with yourself is something that people don't do enough. Knowing your own mind and what you want, even if you're not sure about how to go about getting it, it's really powerful and can bring about big change. Let's say the third gold star for today would be to find yourself a relationship role model. Even if those relationship role models are your parents, like if you had parents who seem to have a very healthy relationship, talk to them. But if you don't, find friends who are in relationship who are very kind to each other or very good communicators, and sit down and pick their brain. I guarantee they'll want to talk to you about it. I've never been offended by somebody asking me about what works in my relationship. It's like a joy to talk about that. So those would be the 3 gold stars I would have your listeners take away.
Yeah, those are beautiful. Thank you. I love that. It's got me thinking. All right. And next up is Unleashing Ivy, 3 rapid fire surprise questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, Brooke, you go first.
Okay, my question is around journaling, because I think a lot of people, they don't know what to ask, what to write, where to start. So what would you recommend? Do you have a certain go-to journal prompt? Do you just sit down and let the floodgates open? Where do people get started if they've never journaled before?
That's a really great question. Or if they're kind of uncomfortable with journaling.
Mm-hmm.
There are prompt journals on Amazon. At the risk of sounding like I'm self-promoting too much, I have one on there. It's something that I kicked out pretty early on in my career with this stuff, and I would love to do another one. But find a prompt journal that asks questions at the top of each page, maybe, because that can be, even if you're not dreaming up all these questions and prompts yourself, it's still a great way of getting to know what's in your heart and what's in your head. So that can be a good thing. You can also find prompts online. I mean, you can just Google, like, what are some great questions to ask myself about my relationship? I love Google. You can find anything you want there, but look for journal prompts online if you can't. Some of the journals that they have online, like on Amazon, that are pre-written are actually pretty sweet. Like they'll have a prompt and then they'll have ways that you can think about it. I don't have anything I can recommend specifically, but I know Amazon's been kicking out a lot of those lately. So that'd be a great place to start for people who are uncomfortable with journaling.
And start with your journal.
if you're anxious, only if you're anxious, because it's written for anxious attachers.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Love it. My question has to do with this balance of allowing yourself or your partner to have their own journey, figuring these things out, or people in your circle that you know kind of have a unhealthy attachment that could do some work. How do you balance being around people that you're like, oh, they could really do some attachment work here, or your partner? Like, how do you balance that, allowing them to have the journey versus like kind of stepping in and giving some direction with the knowledge that you have?
I think the first best thing I can say is ask permission before you're throwing advice at them. Nobody wants unsolicited advice thrown their way. If they're telling you about a problem that they're having, or they're actively doing something that is a problem, for example, if you're in a relationship with that person, it's okay to say, hey, I read something the other day, or I found something online the other day that sounds a lot like this. Are you open to hearing about that? And I think it might make things a little easier. They probably will say yes to that. And if they say no, honor that no. Because if somebody doesn't want your help, like throwing help at them is not going to do anything except frustrate them.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. Yeah.
All right. And last question, Rikki, if you could go back and tell younger Rikki one thing, what would you tell her?
Oh no, I have so many things for younger Rikki. I would lock her in a room and I'd be talking to her for like a week. I wish I could let younger Rikki know. And this is what I try to do with my account too, that this stuff is all so normal. Like I felt like this undateable freak when I was younger because I was so nervous and so anxious and so eager to please. And people were pushing, they'd push me away because of that. And I'd see other people seeming to have such an easy time with relationships. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I felt so unlovable and bad and so much shame about that. I wish I could tell my younger self, like, it's like 20 or 25% of people who do exactly what you're doing in relationships. And there's something you can do about it. That's what I wish I could tell my younger self, just to give her a little bit more hope, because I was hopeless about it for so long.
I know you're a writer, but I feel like you're also a speaker. And I feel like I just want to keep listening to you forever and just find you on any podcast you're ever on. So we'll have to have you back to learn more about what you're doing as your life progresses and your relationships progress, because I feel like you're clearly a lifelong learner, and just the way that you communicate, it's so beautiful and just like loving. Like I feel like you just held my hand walking through this conversation. So
thank you. That means a lot. I love that.
Yeah. So I'm so happy that you joined us, because I know our listeners are going to feel like they've been seen and that they have resources. Like you said, you're huge on giving resources for people and helping them through this. So I'm really happy we met you, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks. It was great to be here.
And listeners, go get the book. Rikki's going to write another book. It's going to get released. Then she's going to come back, and then we're going to get that book, and we're never going to stop. And be sure to follow her. Rikki, thank you so much again. We leave our listeners with a piece of gold, a quote that you love, that inspires you. Will you please share it?
Yes, I have the quote. It's one of my very favorite books that I mentioned earlier, Wired for Love by the wonderful Stan Tatkin. One of his quotes is, "There is no perfect partner. What makes a partner right for you is a shared willingness to create a secure relationship. If you're both willing to go all in together, you're perfect for each other." And that quote really helps to comfort me in the moments that I feel like I'm not perfect for my partner, or vice versa.
This is GOLDIVY signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold. We want to thank you and encourage you to celebrate yourself for taking the time to learn and get inspired in your one beautiful life. And if this podcast means something to you, it would mean so much to us if you'd be willing to take 30 seconds to help support our mission to keep bringing you inspiring stories and guests.
First, following the podcast is important because it helps you never miss an episode. To do this, just go to the Ivy Unleashed podcast show page on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow.
While you're there, if you'd be so kind to give us a 5-star rating and review and share your favorite episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful for your support.
We are thrilled you're here and are so happy that you're taking time to prioritize your wellness, self-discovery, and growth with us.
The Ivy Unleashed podcast is produced in partnership with J. Gray Podcast Production.